for United WFC with me, Matt Crane. I'm joined tonight by Matt Johnson and John. How are we both doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Matt.
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you, mate.
Good. So tonight's show, we're talking about the tweets that came out yesterday from the FA regarding the professionalism of their referees and sort of how they're not going to make referees professional. So there was a statement put out yesterday that was from an interview that Molly Hudson had done from the Times. And this was basically with Joanna Stimson from the FA. And the statement here says, full-time officials in the men's game are heavily subsidised. The FA contribute a little bit, but most of the time this comes from the league. Currently, there is not enough value in the WSL to pay full-time match officials. And then it goes on to say, over the next 3 years, we plan to increase the level of professionalism around the Super League and the Championship. But will that mean full-time referees in the next 3 years? No. It is our vision to have full-time referees, but unfortunately, we're driven by the value of the league and our product. Therefore, we won't change if there's an injection of cash, but it could change in the future. We want to make sure we've got the infrastructure in place when we have financial backing to go with, but we are not quite there yet. So, I mean, me and Matt briefly had a Twitter discussion yesterday, and myself and a couple of other people sort of regarding this topic, didn't we? I'm going to come to you, Matt, first. Obviously, you know, you've read the statement. We kind of, like I said, we talked about it on Twitter. What do you make of that overall then?
I'm staggered. I really am.
Yeah.
You know, the FA, who are supposed to be in charge of the women's game, have literally said there is no value in their own product.
Yeah.
And, you know, a couple of days ago, I was talking to Megan Cann from Ladies in Red, the semi-pro player herself. And, you know, we were just talking even off air. And I'm just saying, you know, they talk about growing the game. And yeah, it's a nice slogan to put on a banner or whatever. It's a nice little soundbite. But it's an empty statement if you're not prepared to do what's required. You know, it's like me saying, when I graduate from uni next year, I want a job writing about women's football. Yeah, it's easy for me to say it, but it means nothing if I'm not prepared to do what's required in order to A, graduate in the first place, and B, get myself some work. And you know, the FA can use all the slogans and sound bites they like, but if they're not prepared to actually do something about it, as I say, it's just empty words.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think, John, obviously your thoughts. I mean, you know, we talked about there sort of the value of the women's game, kind of the women's game as a product. What were your thoughts then on this statement? Obviously, it could be 3 years. It might be longer, depending on sort of finance and funds.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. 3 years. They're not even saying, we're working on it. It's probably not going to be ready for next season, but maybe the season after. It's almost like they're completely disregarding it, the way it's come across. It's like, it's not even a priority or anything like that. And I think, I mean, for myself, at first glance, I think the priority should be making sure that all the games go ahead first, i.e. getting the games on. You know, we'll talk about pitches a bit later or on tomorrow night's YouTube show. But the second thing would be, once the games are on, to make them at the highest standard possible. And that comes down to refereeing. So, yeah, 3 years is a staggering time to think that it's probably not even going to get looked at for another 2.5, 3 years. But it's like they're slagging off their own business at the end of the day, their own company, because they're basically saying that they're just not good enough and they've got no intention of improving. So really disappointing. And it's a shame because to move this forward, one of the, you know, when I try and get people to watch the women's game and they watch it and they see the standard of refereeing, then it's an embarrassment, isn't it? And they probably won't come back and watch a game because they just can't take it seriously. All the new people wanted to watch find it hard to take it seriously when you see so many stupid decisions being made.
Yeah, I think, you know, we obviously briefly between the three of us, we talked about sort of when the WSL went fully pro, as in the whole 12 teams, which was 2017. And I think by the time we're looking at 3 years in 2024, you're talking 7 years there. 7 years of a fully professional league before we are starting to at least maybe see a couple of professional refs. And I think for me, it's kind of, I can't understand it, because if this was, and I don't like comparing, but if this was the men's game and you said, right, you've got no professional referees for 7 years, there'd be an absolute uproar. And I think, you've both sort of covered it there. They've said there's no value in their game or product, which to me, I was quite surprised, because, you're devaluing your product, which since sort of when I first started watching 2014-15 has grown massively in terms of attendance, TV coverage, fans watching games, and sort of accessibility to be able to stream games and things like that. And I think, just couldn't believe that they were basically saying we cannot find the money. I mean, we're not talking, something that's short of money. It's a multi-million-pound organisation, the FA. We have talked about, haven't we, many times about sort of refereeing decisions. I know managers as well, have been outspoken. Sort of, Carla Ward, for instance, got fined. Casey has said things on referees, Emma Hayes, Joe Montemore. I think the list is endless. And I think just looking at it going forward, we need to sort of, have a look and seriously think about where we're going now and sort of think about the next step. Matt, anything else you want to add sort of regarding kind of this statement?
Yeah, I think I just still can't quite get my head around this idea that, they're saying they want to professionalize the game and the environment around the game and everything. Mm-hmm. Well, surely basic logic, is that the referees are part of that. And, there's talk of Sky coming in potentially with this new TV deal on the horizon. Uh-huh. We all know what Sky are like. If they go into something, they go big. Yeah. And they're not going to just invest a few grand here and there. They're going to invest millions. They are not going to want to put their money, and let's be very honest here, their reputation into a substandard product. Mm. If you want the visibility, let's just say the WSL starts getting broadcast on Sky next season. So you get somebody who's never watched a women's game before. I'll check that out, see what it's about. They tune into a game and they see a referee that clearly isn't up to the job, who's making poor decisions. That person ain't going to watch another game. Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, really.
No, I agree. I think you're spot on. I think the image of... Sorry, go on, John. The image of the game, I was just going to say, massively compromised.
Yeah, I was going to say, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And it is a massive shame. It's like it's being held back. And I don't know what the priorities are for the FA. But to me, I just can't see why it's not even being spoken about. But to come out and say, we're basically not good, there's no plans in the next 3 years, to be quite blunt about it the way that it is. Yeah. It's surprising, but also disappointing as well.
Yeah, I think sort of for the last, certainly we've been sort of as United Women fans very vocal in terms of obviously wanting for better referees. And I know this is something where it's a mutual thing across fans from sort of every club. And they've kind of, they've said one thing and another I've read over the past sort of weeks and months about decisions. And it's something I've sort of talked about a lot. I've kind of said one day, and I hope it won't happen, but somebody's either going to be seriously injured or it's going to cost the team points-wise and possibly relegate them or prevent them from winning the league. I don't like going back to our decision against Reading, but last season with the handball that wasn't a handball, that was a header decision, potentially, if the season would have carried on, could have cost us 3rd or 4th place.
Matt, we got knocked out to the FA. We got knocked out to the FA Cup when the Abby McManus header was over the line, and we got knocked out of the cup. Who knows what could have happened in there? There.
Yeah, I think this is the thing now. I think for me, like I said, if we're looking at 3 years, which is a very, very, very long time, especially like Matt said with the TV deal coming in that's going to inject cash. To me, it's like, where's all this cash going? you're giving some to grassroots. That's brilliant. That's what we want. Some goes to advertising. Great. Obviously, you've got running costs, but this is the FA. We're talking hundreds of millions of pounds worth of a business that can't seem to want to, one, in my view, sort of protect the players, and two, like Matt said, if you're sort of an outsider coming to watch a game for the first time, you want it, like you said, if you've got it on Sky, you want it to be the best and to think, do you know what? I love that. I'm going to come back and watch it. So something I read earlier, and I'll get both your thoughts on this, was, again, something very strange from somebody within the Referees Association. They were talking about male versus female referees. Obviously, I don't like comparing too much, but it was saying that a male referee that had refereed, for example, in the men's game, was more likely to let tackles and decisions go that may be either a foul or a booking than a female referee that had either never reffed a men's game or that had reffed a men's game. I think basically what they were trying to say is that the women were kind of card happy and it was very stop-start, and the men were sort of letting a lot go, some of it which was incorrect based on obviously the men's game and sort of the tackles that fly in there. So John, I'll come to you first, sort of thoughts on that and around that.
Yeah, I've heard this. I don't know if it was either from yourself or Natalie or someone on Twitter, but that's like the second time I've heard that this week.
Yeah.
It is interesting to look at. Obviously, it's hard to put it down to the sexes, but when you do see stats like that, it certainly took my eyes as well. And you talk about wanting two different. So you want the same game, but obviously it is two separate games because what's going on in the WSL is completely different to what's happening in the Premier League. But you want to bring the WSL up to standards. But when you start seeing things like that, it's worrying. And like you say, with the potential injuries that could happen, that could lead to, it's wrong. We've seen a number of our fans talking about better refs because Leah Galton's constantly injured. If you just stick that yellow card out there early, stamp your authority a little bit. You don't need to be sending people off. We're not saying we want to see people sent off, but we do want to just see a bit more assertiveness. And then it makes you wonder, do these part-time referees actually have the confidence to do that kind of thing as well? It's part-time referees on a very big level, in my opinion. The WSL is an elite level, in my opinion. So to have part-time referees do that, maybe it is a confidence thing as well. Yeah.
Matt, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is something we've actually talked about on a few of the Barmy Army watch-alongs this season, about how, there does seem to be a real difference between, male and female referees in terms of, how lenient they are. And it does definitely seem like, the male refs will let a lot more go.
Yeah.
It is concerning because, we've seen the injury list we've got at the moment. Yes, some of them, like Ursia Russo, were injuries in training. But, we've just seen, John mentioned Leah, she seems to get some pretty strong treatment every game. She's not the only one, but she does seem to be, I hate to use the word targeted, but I can't think of a better word to use. And of course, look what happened last week. She's now injured. Obviously, we don't know how long it's going to be for, but I just feel like if the worst comes to the worst and it is a long-term injury, I feel like it's been a long time coming for something like that to happen because of how, I'm going to say it, how weak some referees are in, punishing or not punishing some pretty bad fouls.
Yeah, no, spot on. I think, like you say, I'm pretty much the same big believer in the fact that players do need protecting. I think something that is worth bearing in mind, especially in the Championship, is that not every single club is pro. There's a lot of semi-pro teams in there, of which when they get an injury, the insurance isn't always there, or isn't always affordable. And sometimes players are required to either, one, contribute towards rehabilitation or seek, some sort of funding from like a Just Giving page, for example. And we've heard instances of that sort of in the lower lower teams down towards the bottom of the championship where players have, let's say they've broken the leg and they've needed an operation, they've had to kind of self-fund that due to, lack of money. And again, I think it's a big problem going forward because to me, that's not right. These players are playing for the love of the game. They're giving up their time. And like you say, there's not that protection from sort of referees within the game. Now, going forward, obviously, solution-wise, what would you either, one, think the solution could be, or two, like to see sort of going forward in the meantime? I'll go with you first, John.
Yeah, for me, who's new to women's football, I don't really have that loyalty of like the way that things used to be. So I'm open for change. I want to grow the game. Yeah. I want this promotion. Matt Johnson mentioned Sky. Obviously, that's been spoken about before. If an independent company did come in, or if Sky took over, then you'd automatically see things start to happen. I know a lot of people would be against that because some people don't like the change, and I completely understand their reasons why. But for my benefit, I want to see more attendances. I do want to see more mainstream. I do want to see WSL on TV more and more advertisements about them. All this kind of stuff that Sky or another independent company would bring. So I know that's not going to happen overnight, but I think that if the FA don't do something, as Matt rightly said, Sky would or somebody else would, because it's a fantastic brand there. It really is. And all you need to do is to get a company just to invest in it and just give it money, and it will make money 100%, but you just need to promote it and do a better job of doing that first.
Yeah. Matt, do you sort of have any thoughts then regarding either what John said or maybe a solution possibly sort of in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, much like John, I mean, I kind of started following the Lionesses around 2015, around the World Cup. Started following the domestic game around 2018 when United first founded. So much like him, I haven't really got that loyalty of how things used to be. But even if I had, for me, anything that improves the quality of the women's game as a whole, for me, has surely got to be a good thing. And we have got an incredible opportunity with the women's game in this country. Next summer, we are hosting the European Championships, which England have got a genuine chance of actually winning. With the quality of players that we've got, with the experience of the manager that we've got coming in, and the fact that we've reached the semi-finals of the last 3 tournaments, we have got every chance of going very far in a home Euros. Now, what better opportunity to grow women's football in England even more than it has done in the last few years? Yeah, it's come on a lot in the last few years, but if we get things right off the back of this Euros, that the progress that we could make would even blow this out of the water.
Yeah.
But things like this referee statement that we talked about earlier make you think that we are in great danger of spurning this opportunity. Now, whether it is a case of, getting better qualified refs, because I think the refs that are in the WSL at the moment, in the men's game, they'd, referee sort of national league. That's right. Now, whether it is a case of getting better qualified refs or simply, providing better, more affordable training to the existing ones we have, whichever one it is, we need to do it. I'm sure I could think of a few other things if we actually had the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, the opportunity is there.
Yep.
Next summer, we cannot afford to waste this opportunity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think you're spot on. I think, like you say, it's a home Euros, which we're very fortunate to host. And, it could be a while before we host something again. Like you say, we saw the impact from sort of the Lionesses in the 29 World Cup. 2019 World Cup, sorry, and sort of the growth of the game and attendances and everything. I think, like you say, there has to be something where we do not miss this chance to sort of boost our game, so to speak, and kind of the image. But I think for me, you know, I read earlier today there was something came out from the FA, and they are doing it's like a CPD sort of coaching thing, and there was a list of coaches that they are looking to work with and develop to enhance them as coaches and individuals. And the FA are paying for it, which is fine. That's absolutely great. That's what we want to see, you know, better.
That's exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, but yet we seem to, when it comes to referees and player protection, we can't seem to find the money for that, which to me is absolutely staggering. You know, like I say, it's brilliant. There's about 50, I don't know if you've seen it, 15, 16 names on there. It's saying, you know, they'll have access to sort of coaches and webinars, and they'll have training and, you know, all sorts of things provided by the FA, which is absolutely fantastic. But I just think it massively then undervalues, if you can find it for them lot, why can't you find it for referees? And, you know, in my opinion, and I think, you know, I think we all agree in this, and, you know, I'm sure people that have tuned in watching, fans of the clubs, you know, it does need changing. I think the amount of things, you know, like we touched on before, attendances have been boosted, grassroots has been boosted. We've got the Euros coming up, and I think now is the time. This must be pretty much, for me, one of the next major changes that's needed, you know, that's actually quite serious. I think, you know, it's great that people talk about expanding the league, and, you know, of course we want to see that and things, but I think, you know, going forward, this has to be number one priority. And like you touched on before, you know, I think it was you, John, where you said the referee needs to be in control and kind of set the precedent. And I think, you know, look at Arsenal's injury list now, and the scraping literally players together for games. Birmingham, obviously, small squad. Again, few injuries, and that puts them at risk. And I think it's just a common pattern for me that's kind of, you know, developed now over the past few seasons, where we've either seen tackles go unpunished, you know, or very lenient refs, or, you know, ridiculous decisions like the Reading headball, handball sort of incident. But yeah, I think, you know, before we wrap this up then, is there anything else that either of you would like to sort of add or, you know, put out there?
I just want to just reiterate Matt's point about, obviously, with this competition coming up, 2019, obviously there was a lot of hype around the Lionesses, which was great. Man United obviously came, a massive club, came into it. Obviously, this season's the most competitive WSL that there's ever been, with World Cup winners coming across as well. You know, the big three turning into the big four. And for me now, you just want to keep that momentum going. So you could potentially miss the boat if we don't do something in the build-up to like next year. Then potentially you're never gonna have this opportunity again where people are interested. And with lockdown and everything, social media, because you've had nothing else, social media's got a lot more active talking about women's football. This time next year, if we don't continue this momentum, we would have lost the momentum. And then what's going to bring that momentum back? You know, so for me, just like what you guys have just said, we just gotta keep it going, and just don't take the foot off the pedal.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, before we wrap it up, is there anything you want to sort of mention or talk about, just to add to what we've kind of discussed in tonight's show?
Yeah, I think John's just mentioned, you know, the momentum that came from, you know, the World Cup and, you know, United coming into the WSL. I think a little bit of that momentum has been lost. You know, through circumstances out of anyone's control, because of this pandemic. You know, we've had people locked out of stadiums for a year. No, next week will be a year since we were last able to go to a United Women game.
Yeah.
So I think it's inevitable that some of that momentum has been lost, because that nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. But we've got the opportunity now, hopefully by the time next season comes around in September, which will be the lead up to that Euros, you know, hopefully we will at least see some fans back in ground, so we can get back some of what's been lost this season, and then some.
Yeah, and kind of push it on. Absolutely. No, I think you've both sort of, you know, you've nailed it for me. I think we've all agreed on pretty much, you know, the way forward and what we need to do. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. John, you are on, aren't you, with Natalie and Molly Hudson from the Times. Again, sort of expanding a little bit more on what we've talked about tonight. You'll be discussing the FA and things like that, won't you, within the women's game? Like I say, with Molly. Molly's a well-respected women's journalist as well. Just before we go, social shout out. Matt, if people want to find you, where can we find you for a sort of a discussion?
So my Twitter and Instagram are Matt_Johnson_1989. Do a lot of content on my own YouTube channel as well around women's football, mainly focusing on United Women and the Lionesses. My latest video upload will always be in my pin tweet.
Brilliant, thank you. And yourself, John?
Yeah, just on Twitter, John Foster MUFC. We can find me there, and a couple of times a week on YouTube as well.
Brilliant. And my Twitter name is also on screen at MattCrane15. And like I said, you know, any one of us, if you want to engage in MU Women content or just women's football in general, feel free to tweet us. And obviously, as Matt mentioned, you know, he's got his own YouTube channel, so feel free to check out that. Thank you to those that have watched and joined in with us, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Thank you.